Hungary is hosting an informal meeting of European leaders as the bloc faces the prospect of a second Donald Trump presidency. A major area of discussion between the EU leaders is how the bloc can overhaul Europe's economy. And that's after former European Central Bank chief, that's Mario Draghi, released a report in September, which found that Europe must invest up to $863 billion more a year just to avoid falling behind the United States. Fear is also rising in Europe that Trump could call a halt to support for war-torn Ukraine. In a fresh warning today, the International Institute for Security Studies says Europe's defense capacities are insufficient, even though its defense spending has increased since Russia invaded Ukraine. And for more, Trent Murray joins us live from the IISS Defense Summit in Prague. Trent, of course, defense spending that has jumped amongst NATO allies, European countries, since that invasion of Ukraine by Russia. But there are still concerns of the future of defense as well as what happens in NATO under Trump 2.0.
Yeah, good evening, Wei Su. That is absolutely right. That summit taking place right now in the Hungarian capital is entirely focused really on Europe's security. And we are hearing a number of comments from European leaders, which I think really captures the mood right now around how they are feeling following the re-election of former President Donald Trump. We heard from Emmanuel Macron, the French president, with extraordinary language. He said the world is made up of herbivores and carnivores, and if Europe decides to remain herbivores, then the carnivores will win. He went on to say, I don't want to sound aggressive, but we just need to know how to defend ourselves. Some quite colourful language to describe what is a very serious situation, though, because for Europe, they have paid attention to President Trump's campaign. They have seen him lash out at some European countries, calling them, quote, freeloaders in NATO that are relying too much on the US to ensure Europe's security. So right now, I think they are strapping in and bracing themselves for what could be a bumpy few years ahead under a second Trump presidency. But of course, while all of this talk is happening, there is also criticism here that it is all talk and no action. And they're saying if they truly want to ensure security and also solidify the relationship with the White House, then they actually need to put pen to paper by boosting their defense budgets more and also focusing heavily on military production and manufacturing.
And Trent, a lot of talk, certainly, that summit, the informal one that's happening in Hungary, and where you are, Prague, the IISS Defence Summit. The topics that are being considered where you are, how might they be slightly different, or are they in addition to what's happening in Budapest?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the IISS releasing its annual report here. It is fresh off the press, talking about building Europe's defence capabilities. That summit will see a number of senior defence officials from across the world, including the US Assistant Secretary for the Army, the head of NATO's military committee, defence ministers from across Europe, even senior ministers flying from Tokyo and Manila to have an Indo-Pacific input into this summit. This report does make for some quite concerning reading, though. There are inputs in there from, say, the Estonian Defence Ministry, which says within 10 years, Europe will be facing a Soviet-sized mass army from Russia that could pose a significant threat to Europe and NATO. The Danish authorities believe it will be even sooner, 2 to 3 years, before Russia can once again assemble themselves and pose a threat to the European continent. So, needless to say, a lot of discussion right now, but I think, once again, the re-election of former President Trump really casting a shadow over this summit as questions remain of just how committed Washington will be to NATO as the former president once again enters the White House.
Thanks for that. Trent Murray reporting live there from Prague, where we have a IISS Defence Summit going on involving European leaders and defence officials.